Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Wednesday, November 9th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Indiana game is in 3 days. The game against Michigan in 17 days. Coming to you from the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, the indoor field right now. Just wrapped up interviews with Ohio State head coach Ryan Day, defensive coordinator Jim Knowles. As always, there was a ton to talk about with both of those guys. So much so, in fact, that we're just going to be hearing from Ryan Day today on today's show. You're going to hear directly from Ryan Day on some of the stuff he heard from the Northwestern game, some of the stuff looking ahead a little bit to Indiana, and oddly enough, little Michigan talk. Not going to lie, it is not. I guess it's not that much of a surprise. The Michigan game already kind of a thing that a lot of people are focused on. I'm sure you, as fans, probably are. So the media is as well. So a little Michigan talk a couple weeks early for Ryan Day during his Tuesday interviews as well. Let's start though with that Northwestern game because it was wild and it was conditions unlike anything pretty much anyone had seen before. So how did Ryan Day feel like his team performed in those kind of conditions? Was that kind of a toughness situation where they faced a tough challenge against Penn State, having to play in front of a hostile crowd, overcome a fourth quarter deficit there, and then you face some pretty hostile conditions as well at Northwestern. So was Ryan Day happy with how his team responded to those challenges?
When you look at the way that we played in that Penn State game in the fourth quarter, I can't say enough about the toughness of our team, and just I guess it was 28-3 at one point in the fourth quarter, and winning games in the fourth quarter, and that's to me what it's all about. And I think the way that our defensive line found a way to win that game, just being physical up front, tackling, holding them to 7 points, finding a way on offense to score, and moving on. And I think again, that's something that we take a lot of pride in. It's got to continue to build as we go into November, is that we want to have that as a badge of honor.
One of the things that we talked about on our postgame show, on the Buckeye Huddle postgame show, Tony Gerderman and I were talking about the fact that Ryan Day's offense kind of struggles in bad weather. Now, that's not a unique thing. That is something that is common for pretty much every offense. Everyone wants it to be 70 degrees and sunny, or maybe even indoors on a fast, dry track. You're not always going to get that. So does Day see commonalities in the struggles that the offense has had, say, last year against Michigan in bad weather, or then this week against Northwestern?
I think last week was just one of the most unique things I've ever been around. I think someone said at one point there was an 80-mile-an-hour wind gust in the area. It was just very strange. So, if we play in a game like that again, I think we would probably maybe try to, run the quarterback a little bit more, a little bit earlier, but that comes with risks as well. So, I think there's bad weather and then there's extreme weather, and I thought that was, pretty extreme on Saturday.
Well, in that answer, you heard Ryan Day talk about how there's some disadvantages to running the quarterback and having to lean on the quarterback run in the way that they did against Northwestern. So what are some of those disadvantages?
Well, I think CJ, embraced it, and you could see what he can do, and I think it can be a weapon for us moving forward. So, maybe we found a little something there, but that has pluses and minuses as well. But at the end of the day, our running back's got to run, and our line's got to block, and tight end's got to block. Receiver's got to be a part of it. Whether it's the perimeter run game with the bubbles and things like that, or coming down to block safeties. Everyone's got to be involved in this, and we all just got to execute it better.
Something else we discussed on our postgame show was the fact that the offensive line had struggled, and some of those starters we know are not 100% healthy. Matt Jones has had a foot thing for quite a while now and is just clearly not 100%, and they've talked about the fact that he's not 100%. So you have quality depth. You've got guys like Enoch Vamahi. You've got guys like Josh Fryer. Why not give those guys a shot? Why not let Matt Jones maybe rest a little bit, try and get a little healthier, and let some of those younger guys maybe take a shot?
I thought Josh, when he came in, played well. Having the sixth offensive lineman in the game is something that we don't do a lot of. But when we've done it, it's been solid for us, and I think his play has been better. I think he's gotten better. I think he's, when you come back after that ACL, it takes a while to really not just be healthy, but to get to the level of play you were before. I think he's getting to that point. I don't know if he's quite there yet, but he's getting there, and had some good snaps on Saturday. But we're always looking at that. If there's a better, guy or two that we can put on the field, we'll do that. right now we feel like we're playing the best 5.
I think a lot of Ohio State fans probably walked away from that Northwestern game thinking, boy, that was an ugly, ugly, ugly win. And they were not necessarily wrong. But as they saw later on in the evening, an ugly win is better than what happened to Alabama or Clemson or Tennessee. So is a win to Ryan Day? Is there such a thing as an ugly win, or is just a win is a win?
You play 9 conference games, and then our 10th was Notre Dame. And so that's 10 conference games, and you got to bring it every week. And it's not like you can show up and just roll your helmets out there. It doesn't work that way. And when you have different situations, you put yourself at risk, and that's something that we brought up all along. We know that that's the case, and so we have to just keep finding ways to win. And I think that's very important to recognize that if you keep winning, you're going to keep moving on. So, style points or no style points win. That being said, when you look at the film, are we playing really clean football in all areas? Are we, getting better every week? Those are the things we're going to focus on, and that's what we'll get back to work today. And we'll have a meeting here at 2:30, identify the things we've got to get better at, and have a good week of practice and go play Indiana.
We said off the top of the show, there are still 17 days to go until that Michigan game. Just 3 till Indiana, but Indiana, if you take a look at the Big Ten standings, several spots below Michigan. So how much is Ohio State really preparing for Michigan right now, and how much have they been preparing for Michigan all along?
What we say around here is we live it every day, working at it every day of the year. And, we have to focus on beating Indiana this week. But the way that we approach it is we're working on that game every day of the year.
Day has preached toughness for so long, especially with regards to the Michigan game. Does he think that his guys are where they need to be when it comes to toughness for that Michigan game?
I think we've definitely shown it. I think you can see that our guys have played physical, and that's something that we've taken a lot of pride in this year. You can see what we've done this season, but again, it's something that is you can't just say, all of a sudden you're playing, efficient football, you're playing tough football, you're playing clean football, you're doing this, you're doing that, and all of a sudden it's just going to happen again the next week. You just got to keep bringing it every week, and then at the end of the year, you'll look back on the body of work, and then you can start identifying the things you've done well. But I think that throughout the year, I think if you've seen some of the teams we played and talked to the teams we played, you've recognized how hard, how tough we played. And again, the 3 things that we focused on is toughness, discipline, and skill.
This is a very busy time of year for a college football program. Not only is it the home stretch of the regular season, it's also the home stretch for recruiting. And it is shaping up to be quite an eventful few weeks in the lead up to early signing day in mid-December. So what are the coaches doing? How do you prepare yourself for what could be a very tumultuous guys coming, guys leaving, guys flipping? Who are they going to get? Who are they not going to get? How do you prepare yourself for that in this modern recruiting world with NIL and a constant coaching carousel and all that stuff? And then how important does that make it to have guys who really are going to fit your culture and be a part of your program for that reason?
Well, we can keep winning because that plays into it big time. And I think that all the recruits want to see, how well you're playing on Saturday and what you said in recruiting is actually happening. I think a big part of that is on defense. Some of the things that we've talked to recruits about on the defensive side, they had to see it with their own eyes, and I think that they're doing that. So, we have our weekly calls and we touch base with guys, but a big part of this is finishing the season strong and making sure that they see where we're at as a program, because as you project out, in college football, you want to make sure that you're part of a program that's winning and that has a lot of stability, and that's something that we sell a lot. Oh, that's everything right now. Well, I guess I could say more than ever, but I'm sure, it's been like this for 30 years here, but you have to make sure that you're recruiting great people. With the way that things have changed with the transfer portal, with NIL, a culture fit is critically important. Because not every day is going to be perfect, and you want to have guys that want to be Buckeyes for the right reasons, and they're going to work through adversity and tough times, and so, that's a big part of the recruiting process.
It is probably not a big secret to Ohio State fans that the Buckeyes have struggled to run the ball some in recent weeks. They struggled against Iowa. They struggled against Penn State in a very hostile environment, and then with the wind, if you can't really pass the ball, that means everyone knows you're going to run it. So when you are struggling to run the ball like that, how can you use guys like Emeka Egbuka, for example, in the run game? We've seen that kind of jet sweep action be really effective at times for the Buckeyes. How can they utilize that to make that run game more effective?
Yeah, I mean that's where a lot of those big plays came from was some of those type of plays. You know, when you go sideways, you run the risk of having negative plays. We had a couple that did happen that way, and when you're in a game like that and you're 2nd and 14, that's not a good place to be in with that type of environment. So we tried to stay on schedule, and we did try to throw the ball too. We felt like we wanted to at least try to throw the ball, and you could see there was only a few types of throws that really worked, even when the wind was at our back. So we pushed. When the wind was at our back, we were trying to play fast. When the wind was in our face, we were trying to slow down a little bit. But yeah, I think those type of things when you get the ball to the perimeter created some big plays for us. And there was some other ones that didn't, that I thought if we had executed them better could have been better plays.
Those run game issues are unquestionably an issue. They've kept popping up week after week in sort of different situations. So how does Ryan Day diagnose where the issues are? And is he happy with what he's seen out of his offensive line so far?
Yeah, looking at all those things, I mean, our expectation here. Our expectation is to score every time we have the ball. So, yeah, I mean, if you're looking at it like that, no, it's not good enough, and we need to be better. And certainly the O-line is a big part of that, but the running backs are too, the tight ends, the wide receivers, the quarterback, everyone's involved in the run game. So, and especially in a game like that where they're all down in there and everyone has to do their part to equate numbers. So, yeah, it's something we'll keep looking at and trying to make sure we have the right stuff in, and then holding everybody accountable to do their job, and that's coaches, players, everybody.
2 years ago when Indiana came to Ohio State, there was no one in the crowd. There were about 600 people there for the game, and then the game ended up deciding the Big Ten East Championship. Well, this year is going to be very different in a couple ways. There are going to be a lot more than 600 people there, but also Indiana is nowhere near the Big Ten Championship race. They have only won one Big Ten game last year and this year combined. Kind of a mess, but remember, Ohio State just went on the road to Northwestern, a team that had only won one game all season, and got a pretty good challenge. So what is Day expecting to see from the Hoosiers on Saturday?
Yeah, and I thought Fitz did a great job, and his staff did a great job getting everybody going last week. A lot of respect for him and his staff. But same thing with Tom Allen. You guys know how much of a competitor he is, and certainly has his hands all over the defense. So same thing. They're going to come in here and fight and play really, really hard. They always have. It's a program with a lot of pride. He has a lot of pride. So it's a noon kick, and we got to come out and play a little better early on in the game. I think that's going to be important, and that'll be a focus this week.
Here's one of those things that fans love to discuss online, and you don't generally hear coaches get asked about. But Ryan Day was asked about alternate uniforms. You're heading into alternate, rivalry season, and a lot of times that has meant alternate uniforms for various teams, including Ohio State. So what does Day think about alternate uniforms? It's obviously something that you hear about with recruits loving them, but what does Day think about them?
I like the traditional uniforms. I love that part of college football. I think that some of our players and recruits like to see a different style and a different swag and look to the uniforms, and that's great. But I'm more of a traditionalist and love the look that's been in college football for a long time. Certainly at Ohio State, in the jerseys that we've worn. But even just across the country and all the different uniforms over the years, it's just something about that I like.
One thing that has been a common thread through some of the Buckeyes' recent games is sort of slow starts. Opponents have gotten off to decent starts against them, and opponents who you wouldn't expect to. I mean, the Rutgers was off to a 7-0 lead. Northwestern was off to a 7-0 lead. They kind of got off to a slow start against Penn State. They kind of got off to a slow start against Iowa. So what do you do about that? How do you fix that?
Yeah, no, I mean, you look at the Iowa and the Penn State game, I felt like we created some turnovers on it. I think we actually won those first quarters maybe, but we could have jumped on them early. And I think everyone feels that. Yeah, I feel the same way. So let's get in a rhythm early on and get going. And, noon start, wake up fast and get to clicking some pads.
Really interesting question from Austin Ward of Rivals. He asked Ryan Day about the defensive line rotation, because Larry Johnson always preaches the importance of rotation so that you have those guys, your key guys, fresh in the fourth quarter. Well, Larry Johnson rotated throughout the game, and then Zach Harrison and JT Tuimoloau only played about half of the snaps in the fourth quarter. So if those guys are your best defensive ends and you're playing in crunch time, don't you want to see those guys out there more in those moments? Isn't that the whole point of the rotation, is being able to put those guys out there in those key moments? Day was asked whether that was an issue.
No, I think it's a good question. I think the first thing is we have a deep D-line. So I think that's the first thing. And like you said, the goal is to be fresh, and certainly at the end of games, but at the end of the season as well. I think for those guys, I think we were maybe in the like 70s or late 70s, maybe 80 plays, something like that in the game. And I think most of those guys were into the mid to high 50s. So, almost 80% of the snaps they were in there for, which is, in a day like that, it's pretty good. I think some of it plays into the personnel groupings. We do change some personnel groupings with Jim. There's sub, there's big, there's sack, there's a lot of different things that come out there. So, he's going to rotate those guys, and I think the overall number was good. Maybe one of those guys got in a rotation, in the fourth quarter there. But overall, if they're on there for 80 to 85% of the game in a big game like that, I think those are pretty good numbers and keeps guys healthy in a heavy running game like that.
One of the more troubling sequences for Ohio State fans during that game came in the first half, where Ohio State had a 3rd and 1, ran the ball and got stuffed, and they had a 4th and 1, and they ran the ball and got stuffed. That is something that Justin Fry, at the beginning of the year, when he first came to Ohio State, said, when you're going to run the ball and the other team knows you're going to run the ball, you've got to be able to run the ball. Well, Saturday at Northwestern, at least in that sequence, they couldn't do that. So how big of a concern is that to Ryan Day?
I think that's a great point, because of all the things that I was disappointed with on Saturday running the football, short yardage was the one that was high on the list. They're all going to be in there, and we've got to convert in those situations. I think it was a combination of things. There was multiple ones. That hurt us on 3rd down, but we didn't quite get the movement we wanted to, and we didn't quite enter the blocks the right way. You'll see a couple of them where we're not flush on the blocks, and then there's one scheme that we probably could have done a better job with in terms of doing that. But overall, it was just they were down in there and we weren't getting enough movement. We gotta get our pads down lower. We got to fit those blocks a little bit better. And then, there's a couple times we can get them in better plays. So I think, it's not just one person, that made, the mistake, because there was multiple ones we didn't convert on.
Whenever you're struggling, everyone's always looking to point the finger at someone. So someone asked, okay, how much of that was on Mayan Williams? He was the back on both of those plays. How much of those short yardage struggles does Day put on Mayan Williams, and maybe not picking the right hole, or not being decisive enough, or not making the right cut?
On all of them, I'm not going to give him a 100% grade, no, but I can't just sit here and say it was his fault either. It's a little bit everybody, and that's not a good sign. Is when it's kind of one guy here and one guy there. But that's what happened.
One big change from last year's offense to this year's offense is that the Buckeyes have used the running backs a lot less in the passing game. So is that a function of what defenses are doing to attack them, or is there something else at work there?
I don't know. I think it's a good point. I don't know if I don't think it's a schematic thing. Yeah, I don't think so. We've tried to throw a couple screens to those guys, didn't quite work out. We're still working at that to make sure that that's a weapon for us, and that's usually been good. And we'll keep working at it. I think a little bit of it too is just those guys have kind of been in and out a little bit this year. So I don't know if we've got the rhythm and the chemistry that we wanted there. And so hopefully we can get all these guys rolling here as we head into these last few games.
Here's something else we talked about on our post-game show. Ohio State's offense is sort of designed, it seems like, to excel in fast, dry tracks. Your last 3 games of the year are going to be, and if you're reaching your goals, in Indianapolis on a fast, dry track in a dome, and then in either a warm weather or a dome in one of the New Year's Six games, and then potentially in the national championship game. This year, that would be Indianapolis, and then either Phoenix or Atlanta, and then LA. So you can have an offense designed to excel in those situations, or you can have an offense designed to excel in 50-mile-an-hour winds in Chicago and snow in Ann Arbor and all that. Do you need 2 separate offenses if you're Ohio State at this point?
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's very perceptive, and it's something that I thought a lot about in the offseason. I think that's why you see us in some of the under center stuff in the different groupings. There was a point in that game last week where I was nervous that the snap was going to go over the quarterback's head, so we were under centered a lot more. But that's, like you said, that's playing in the Big Ten in November. So, again, that was a little bit of extreme, but we've tried to make some adaptations to make sure that we're ready for those type of environments, because then you turn around and then you're in Indy and it's wide open and it's 72 degrees on a fast track. So, yeah, you have to have both of those things in order to get to where you want in terms of reaching your goals. absolutely.
We've talked over and over about the weather in that game on Saturday in Evanston, and it was a very unique situation. So when you're facing a situation like that with weather that is way beyond the normal, is there a debate in Ryan Day's head between the voice on the one shoulder, the angel on one shoulder, or the devil, depending on which way you want to view it, saying, listen, just line up an I formation, just run it down their throats and it doesn't matter. And then whoever you want to say is on the other shoulder saying, hey, why don't we just run our offense? And I'm sure we can make it work. Is that a debate that's going on in Ryan Day's head in a moment like that?
Yeah, you might have my head bugged, I think, in that game. That's about it. It's about exactly what it was. Yeah, and that was the conversation during the week. You looked at your phone and you're like, okay, 30-mile-an-hour winds, 40-mile-an-hour winds. It'll be all right. We'll be good. We'll figure it out, like we always do. Well, what if it isn't? So went back, watched the Patriots play the Bills in the Win Bowl. Went back, watched, and tried to find all the win games from the last couple of years in the NFL. Watched the Browns play the Raiders in 2020 up there, and it was like 30-mile-an-hour winds. And just tried to figure out, okay, if this happens like this, like what do we do? Didn't have a lot of answers because there wasn't a lot going on in those games. But yeah, I mean, I think you try to you have to. It's a real thing, but at the same time, you tell our guys, well, we got to go win the game. We just have to play. And if you make it a bigger thing, then it becomes more of a distraction. I thought warming up, we were throwing and catching. I saw one of the punts from the other team actually go straight in the air and land on our side of the line of scrimmage, which I asked the referee, if the ball is punted and it lands on our side of the line of scrimmage, is it live? Can we pick it up? And he says, no, if it crosses the line of scrimmage and comes back, it's not. And then his buddy says, no, it is live. So they had to have a little discussion. And so I had to tell the team if that ever happened, like you pick it up and score, So like it was kind of one of those days. But to answer your question, yeah, there's a part of we just got to go do what we do because we have a really good game plan about what they do. But then all of a sudden you have to have this package over here that we kind of put together late in the week to say if it gets really extreme and you literally can't throw a forward pass, what do you get to? And that's, so the call sheet was like, like that.
We've heard over and over and over about Ohio State and toughness and needing to have the right attitude. Is being able to run the ball in a situation like they faced on Saturday where you've got terrible conditions and everyone knows you're going to run the ball, is that pretty much just all attitude? And if it is, did Ohio State pass the test on Saturday?
You got to get the first down. There's no excuse for not getting the first down. So there can be 50 guys in a box. You got to go get it. You got to get movement, and the extra guy, you got to run him over. You got to crack block him, get it to the corner, and convert. That's the bottom line. So yeah, if we're not converting, then yeah, we're coming up short.
We mentioned the injury to Matthew Jones's foot. Is that something that's really hindering him just play to play, down to down in a normal situation? And if so, how much more challenging is it to swap in a offensive lineman for just a series or two than it would be to have a wide receiver who maybe needed to get swapped out? Because of the unique nature of the offensive line, and those guys really need to work together and gel together. Is that something that is much more difficult for a lineman than guys at other positions?
He's like a lot of our guys. There's a lot of things that this time of year guys are fighting through, and he's a tough player, and we think he gives us our best chance to go be successful. But yeah, I mean, he's like a lot of our guys that have these bumps and bruises right now that he's fighting through, and so yeah, I mean, it's that time of year, I guess. No, I think it's a good point. I mean, I think you can do that in the O-line. Yeah, I think you can spell some guys if we think that he needs that. And that's something that usually we decide before the game, like get the injury report, talk to guy. Do we think that we need to, put him on a pitch count? If we do, then we can do that. And I think with the O-line, if it's just one guy, it's not the end of the world. But again, we try to make those decisions going into the game, and we feel like based on what we see in practice every day that those five are our best five.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. It was a very eventful press conference with Ryan Day on Tuesday, and obviously a lot to talk about coming out of that one. So we will have probably more from Jim Knowles at some point later on in the week. It's going to be quite a busy week. College football playoff rankings come out on Tuesday night. We'll have our usual live show, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle, starting at 7 o'clock. We'll have a full update on those college football playoff rankings. Should be a very interesting week to see where the Buckeyes slot in, where some other teams slot in. Might learn a little bit more about how things might shake out over the next few weeks. And then, of course, have that Michigan game coming up. So Wouldn't this be a great time to become a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com? You're going to have a really, really eventful few weeks in the lead up to that game, and you can become a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com to get all the insight, all the analysis from our fantastic team of insiders, Kevin Noon, Tony Gerderman and I covering the team, Mark Givler, Alex Gleitman on recruiting, Justin Whitlatch, Devin Radcliffe, Ross Fulton on X's and O's. Just a fantastic team, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Sign up today. It's 50 cents a day, less than 50 cents a day. It is going to be quite an eventful month. You're going to want to be there. Give it a shot. I'm sure you're going to like it, but it is, like I said, the price of a lousy chain store pizza. So instead, treat yourself to a month of great coverage at BuckeyeHuddle.com. See if you like it, and if you do, great. Sign up for a annual membership, and you get a nice discounted rate then. So that'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.